But this one, I don't even remember the characters' names. It's been so long. Graham and somebody else. Oh no. Hello everybody, my name is Kelsey and we're about to get very, very nerdy with my favorite books of 2021. So it is the last video of 2021, which means we're going to talk about all of my favorites from this year. So I was toying with how many I wanted to do because I had 15 kind of swirling in my brain, so I thought I'll do 10 with 5 honorable mentions, and I thought I'll just do my top 15. But I decided just to go with my top 10 because if we did any more, we would be here forever. So I'm just going to do my top 10 and just kind of assume that the books you don't see here that were in my kind of like favorites by month were in the honorable mention section, because that's honestly pretty accurate. But we're just going to count down from 10 to 1, and I'll leave all of them linked down below if you want to get more information on them, but I've raved about all of these at some point. So I will leave my wrap-up playlist down below as well if you'd like to check out kind of any of those. I don't remember all of the months I read, most of the months I read these in, but let's just get into it. No more stalling. Let's just get into it. So coming in at number 10 is I Speak Boy by Jessica Brody. This is a book that I actually had the arc of on NetGalley and absolutely adore. So obviously I had to get my own copy, and I'm pretty sure it's a signed personalized copy that I got when I was doing a pre-order for this. So this is a stunning middle grade book that is kind of a reimagining of Emma by Jane Austen. So you don't have to have read or even really know about Emma to really enjoy this book. It's a complete work on its own, but it does have hints to characters and places and things like that from the original, and of course the kind of like core plot is pretty similar. But we follow our main character Em, who is very boy obsessed. She's in middle school. I don't remember exactly what grade she's in, but she is in middle school, and one day she just wakes up with a new app on her phone. In place of her iTranslate app, she now has an I Speak Boy app, and it's basically exactly what it sounds like. When it's open, it records what boys and men say and kind of translates it into what they actually mean. And it was so much fun to dive into this one. I really related to some of the stuff that happens here just because of just how boy crazed I was when I was in middle and early high school. So I felt a little personally attacked by that, I'm not gonna lie. But it was just this idea of this app was so creative. I'd never really experienced anything like that before, and I adored it. It's just a very fascinating look at this, male population in middle school, and I also think it's really realistic because it's just this like awkward in-between time. But I just had an absolute blast going through this. I read it so quickly, and I just adored it. I can't say enough good things about it. Whether you've read the original source material or not, I think everyone can just go into this and really just have a great time. Coming in at number 9 is the first volume of Dreaming Sun, which honestly is kind of in the place of this entire series. So this is, I read this probably about the middle of the year and have not stopped raving about this series. It is a 10-volume length series. I've only read the first 4 so far, but I adore this. It's a just fun time, honestly. But we follow our main character, Shirohama, and her dad and stepmom have just had a new kid, and she feels very kind of forgotten, hidden in the background. So she decides to run away. And so as she runs away, she meets this man in a park, and he kind of like talks her out of running away and convinces her to live with him because he's got an extra room for pretty cheap. But he does have some stipulations for her moving in. She has to tell him why she's running away. She has to help him find some keys, and then she has to have a dream and fall in love. And she's like, okay, I think I can do that. And so she moves in with him and these other 2 boys who live there who go to her school. And so it's this very cute story of her and her kind of found family, basically, as she really finds her own people. And then also she's just crazy. She's very boy obsessed, I'm not gonna lie, and her love interest changes so quickly. So it is not for everyone, and I do get that, but I had a blast. I just flew through this in like a day. I mean, they're not very long anyway, but like I just got sucked in so quickly, and I didn't know what to expect from this series, and I just have fallen in love with all these characters. I don't really know why I fell in love so hard for these characters, but I did, and I am obsessed with the series, and I highly recommend it to everybody. It is just pure fun. It's just pure fun. So yeah, that one comes in at number 9. So coming in at number 8 is actually Akamath, A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. Now I did do a special spoilery vlog of this one and the third one, which is ACOWAR, which I'll leave linked above if you'd like to check those out. But I had not read the ACOTAR series, and I really got into Sarah J. Maas this year. I'd never read anything by her until about March this year. And this one's my favorite in the series. I think it really wraps up a lot of stuff. It really sets the whole series, the series as a whole, really just kind of on a different path. The first one just kind of sets up everything, and this one really tells you where we're going with it. And I just adore this one. So this one is kind of a placeholder as well for the entire series, but I do think that Akamath is my favorite in the series. So I'm sure many people know what the ACOTAR series is about, but it follows a girl named Feyre who kills a wolf in the woods. She's kind of like hunting for food, and she ends up killing a wolf, and the wolf is actually a fae in disguise. So this fae kind of comes over to claim her life in place of this, you know, other fae that he has lost. He doesn't kill her, he just brings her over to the fae world, and she's not really allowed to go back to her family. And that just kind of sets off the entire scope of the series. But this one, like I said, I think really kind of gets the reader on the right track for where we're going. Plus we learn a lot about Feyre as a person in here. There's a lot of romance that really begins in this series that I love, or in this book that I love. And I don't know, there's just a whole lot with her, and she's kind of discovering some stuff that she's able to do now, and there's just a lot of plot things in this that I absolutely adored. So yeah, I love this book so much, and I'm really happy that I was able to read a good, almost the entire ACOTAR series up to date, minus one book this year. So yeah, this one took over my life. This entire series took over my life this summer, and I'm not at all upset about it. Not even in the slightest. Coming in at number 7 is The Wallflower Ranger by Tessa Dare. Y'all knew I had to get a Dare book in here somewhere, right? Because like I discovered and fell head over heels in love with this writer this year. This one is the third in her Girl Meets Duke series, which is her most recent series. There's one more left to come out in a couple of years. And this series just basically follows this friend group, and each book is a different respective romance. And this one follows Penelope and her next door neighbor called Gabriel, I believe? Yes, Gabriel Duke. And he has bought this house, and he's kind of revamping it and selling it with the hope of it being next to her, because she's pretty well known. But her thing is she likes to take in stray animals, and not just like cats and dogs. Like she's got a parrot, she's got I think a 3-legged goat. A 2-legged dog, a foul-mouthed parrot, a goat, an otter, a hedgehog. Like literally all of the stuff. And so they kind of strike up this bargain where he's going to help her find loving homes for all of these animals, because that's going to help him sell the property, but also it's going to help her family accept that she can still live there, kind of. There's a whole lot there. But Tessa Dare has a very funny way of writing. Funny as in humorous. Like you're reading it and you literally cackle out loud when things happen. So I've really got into historical romance this year. I've always loved historical romance, but it kind of took over my life this year. And I've just accepted it, and I love every aspect of it. And I am so happy that I started reading her books, because she has quickly become one of my favorite authors. I really do like the way she writes, because she has a different way of looking at things, not just like the perspective of her characters are different. It's just she says things that are just really funny, and I don't know how to explain her writing to you unless you've read it. She just has a very unique sense of writing that I've just fallen in love with, and you fly through her books, and this one is my favorite so far of hers, of the ones that I read in 2021. I don't know what it is. The chemistry between these two characters is everything. So yeah, I am obsessed with Tessa Dare, if you didn't know, and I cannot wait to continue reading all of the fantastic things. So many Tessa Dare books I haven't read. I can't wait to get to all of them, is basically what I'm saying. So yeah, I love her. and this book specifically. Coming in at number 6 is the only book that I don't actually own, and I really want to remedy this because I want to get my hands on this one, and that is Never Seduce a Scot by Maya Banks. This really started off all of my historical romance obsession this year, because I saw this on my friend Taylor. I'll leave her Instagram down below, but I saw it on her channel. She was doing a TBR game for a while, and so she put it on there, and it sounded so interesting that I immediately put it on my TBR, and then we decided to buddy read this and a bunch of Maya Banks books, and that kind of started off this whole historical romance and historical romance buddy reads and stuff like that. So this follows our characters Evelyn and Graham, and this I think is the first in the Montgomery, I think it's called the Montgomery Armstrong series, and it just kind of follows a bunch of siblings within this world. But basically in this world there are two clans, Montgomerys, Armstrongs, and they're fighting, and the king decides that he's going to step in to stop this by making the Laird's daughter of, I believe it's the Armstrong clan, marry the Laird of the Montgomery clan, and so that's what happens, is it's a, marriage of convenience, hopefully to bring these two lands together and stop warring. However, Evangeline is deaf, and her entire clan does not know this. She just kind of plays dumb. She had an accident when she was younger, and she has not been able to hear sense, but she can read lips, and so sometimes it sounds like she's there, and sometimes it sounds like she's not. So her entire clan thinks that she is not fully there anymore, and so she goes to marry this guy, and it's their romance and kind of them trying to figure out how to work around her when she's not telling anybody what's going on. And so I don't know what it was, but I just fell head over heels in love with these characters. This is my favorite historical romance of the year. It's like on my top 10 historical romances of all time. This is a new favorite. I love this one so much. I love their chemistry. I love how caring they are towards one another. I'm a huge fan of that like Scottish Highlander kind of romances, and this just fit perfectly in that. It's kind of a hate to love at moments, but really it was just the two of them and watching them grow together, and just how interesting it was to see a historical romance where one of the characters has something different about them, and it's not just your normal, hate to love kind of things. There was something else added onto the plot with her inability to hear, and I just thought that was really fascinating to see that kind of representation in a historical romance. And so I love this book. If you can't tell by how much I'm gushing about this book, I love this book. So I need to get my hands on this, because I can't believe I don't have it, to be honest. But I love, 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 love this book so much. It's my, like I said, top 10, but honestly it's probably within the top 3 of my favorite historical romances of all time. So yeah, I have, since I finished it, I have not stopped thinking about it. It's got permanent place in my brain. It probably will never leave. So yeah, I love this book so much. And then at number 5 is Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert. This started my love for this author. Started off my entire love for the Brown Sisters series. I have read all of them by now, and I love Talia Hibbert's writing. She also has a very humorous way of writing, and a very kind of straightforward, matter-of-fact, just way of making her characters. And I really like her books, specifically the Brown Sisters series, because all of her books have not your stereotypical main leads, and there's a lot of extra stuff with it. So with this one specifically, we follow Chloe Brown, who almost gets hit by a car at the beginning of the book, and she decides that, she didn't have like the life flashes before her life moment. Her life was pretty boring, so she's going to change that, and she's made a list of things that's going to help her get a life. And so one of the first ones that she does is she moves out of her house. So she moves into this apartment complex, and her and the handyman don't really get off on the right foot, but somehow things happen, and he discovers this list and kind of starts to help her out with this list. But there's a lot of stuff with this because he's dealing with an abuse, like kind of the trauma that came with a past abusive relationship, and she is chronically ill, and so she has a lot of issues just in her day-to-day life. And it was really interesting to see those aspects in this book, because that is not the point. They are just things that these characters are dealing with, but that is not the point of this book. The book is their romance. This is my favorite in the entire series, so this is kind of like a stand-in for the entire series, but I love all of them so much. I love her witty writing style. It's really funny. I laughed out loud multiple times while reading this book, or all of her books in this series, and I just think they're very interesting and unique romances that are also really, really believable and also really, really realistic in the way that these characters are acting. So yeah, I loved it. I loved it. So coming in at number 4, we are making our way through this list, you guys. But coming in at number 4 is The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. This book's great. I cannot stop raving about this book. I understand all of the hype that surrounded it, and I agree with all the hype. I think it deserves the hype that it gets. This follows our main character, Linus, and he works, I always forget the name, he works for the department in charge of magical youth. So in this world, some kids do have magical powers. And so his job is to go to a bunch of these little houses, orphanages, just to check it out, make sure everything is, up to code. Everything is good to go, basically. And he is sent on a special assignment to this house in the middle of nowhere. And he's not sure why it's so secretive. He was not given any files on any of the kids that live there until he physically gets there. And so he learns a lot because all of these kids are slightly different for one reason or another. And he is sent there for a very specific reason that he doesn't even know what it is. But it's him at this house as he's learning to kind of love these kids and kind of get to know them a little bit more and get to know the kind of caretaker of this house and the guy who's kind of in charge of it all a little bit more. And it's just the sweetest little thing ever. I was not 100% in love with the writing when I started this. It kind of, I don't know, it rubbed me a little bit the wrong way, and I don't really know why. But then I got into the story and I completely forgot about that, and I got sucked in and fell in love with these characters. Like, seriously, I love this. So when people say that this feels like middle grade for adults, I completely understand that. It does have that very whimsical style that you see a lot of times in younger works, but yeah, it was great. I loved it. It definitely makes you think a lot, and y'all, I mean, what more can I say? This book was amazing. I loved it. Coming in at number 3 is Lovely War by Julie Berry. Y'all, so I read this book for a readathon that was called Do the Thing-a-thon. I'll leave my vlog for it up above if you'd like to check it out. But the whole point of this readathon was to read the books that you keep saying that you're going to read or put on TBRs, and you never do. And this has been on so many different TBRs, so many different monthly TBRs, like it's ridiculous. So I finally decided to give it a shot. And it was great. So this basically takes place during World Wars I and II, mostly World War I, but World War II does play a little bit of a part. And it's basically following just these two different couples, but it's all told from the perspective of Greek gods, specifically Aphrodite. She's the main person, but you've also got Apollo, Ares, Hades, I believe that's actually it, who also kind of like add their 2 cents to the story. So it's just a very fascinating way to look at a very tough time, and I'm not a huge fan of books set during wars. You guys know this, I talk about it all the time, but this just hit different, like it was just a very interesting format for a story, because like, while yes, you're focusing on kind of the stuff and these 2 couples that are going through this war, but it's just told in such a different and unique way. So I cannot stop raving about this. I feel like I keep saying the same things when I talk about this book, is that I did not expect to love this as much as I did, and it completely blew me away. There are so many different layers to this story. Like, you've got these different people in the war, and then you've got the Greek gods telling the story, but there's a reason the Greek gods are telling the story, and it's just, there's so much to this book, yet it's not complicated to follow. You're right there with the characters. And also, even though it does follow kind of a Greek mythology twist, you don't have to know anything about the Greek gods to go into this book and love it, or even understand this book. Like, they're going to tell you what you need to know about them in order for it to make sense in this world. So I just loved everything about this book. It was so freaking good, and I want everyone to read this. I love this book so much I've gifted it to people. Like, that's how much I want everyone to read this book. So I loved it. I'm never going to stop raving about this. I think what really pushed me over the edge is Haley from Haley and Bookland read this book and also would not stop talking about it. And now I understand because, yeah. It's worth it. It's worth it. All right, we're down to the last two. So, I'm even going to change my mind just sitting here. Basically, the last two are my favorite two books of the entire year, and they're kind of interchangeable. Even though I'm going to put one in a one spot, they go back and forth, in my opinion, on like which one is actually my favorite. So it's kind of a tie. But coming in at number 2, these should not be a surprise if you've been on my channel for any length of time. But coming in at number 2 is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. Again, I've talked about this, oh my gosh, countless times. But I read this for a vlog where I was reading a bunch of hyped books that were out of my comfort zone for one reason or another to see if they were actually worth the hype for me. This one is ridiculously popular. Everyone seems to love this book because everyone loves V.E. Schwab. Now, I went into this book having read one book by V.E. Schwab, which is the first in a Dark Shade of Magic trilogy, and I did not enjoy that book very much. I mean, it was just kind of okay, you know? And I heard that this was nothing like anything she's written before. It was very different, so if you were in love with all of her books, this one wasn't for you and vice versa. So I was very hesitant, yet excited to go into this because I wanted to see if that was accurate for me as well. And it was. So this was a character named Addie LaRue, and she has made a deal with... He's never really called a devil, but like he's kind of thought of as like a devil character. And her goal is basically just her freedom. She wants her freedom, but she doesn't specify the terms, and so what actually ends up happening is she is forgotten by everybody. So if you are talking to her and then you leave the room or she leaves the room, you immediately forget her. And you have to start all over again. So it's a very hard life for her to live. But the story really kicks off kind of in like a modern setting. I don't actually remember what year it is? 2014. So this takes place in kind of a modern 2014 timeline, where she meets this guy who is a bookseller in a bookstore, and he remembers her. And so you have that, but then you've also got the timeline of her making this deal and kind of watching her get used to this kind of power that she has of people just forgetting her. And it's just a beautifully told story. I loved that dual timeline. I thought that the writing was very different than what I remember from A Darker Shade of Magic. It's very lyrical, which I think works really well for the characters we have here. And I cannot rave about this enough. It completely blew me away. It was nothing like I expected it to be, and it was amazing all at the same time. So I highly, 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 highly recommend this book. In my opinion, it definitely lives up to the hype, but I will say just be kind of wary if you're someone who loves V.E. Schwab's writing, because I've heard that a lot of people who love her past stuff don't particularly love this one. Which, you know, I understand. It's very different than other stuff that she has written, but it was amazing. I will never stop raving about this book. It was so freaking good. So good. Coming in at number 1. Do you have a guess? Make your predictions down below. Let me know if you were correct. House of Earth and Blood, the first in the Crescent City series by Sarah J. Maas. This one I read in March for a kind of... It was a very long secret TBR, but basically I was reading people's favorites from 2020, and this one was Becca from Becca and the Books' favorites, or on that list. And I'd never read anything by Sarah J. Maas. I'd heard good and bad things about her writing, but everything I'd heard about her, like, writing was stuff that I liked, even if people were like, I don't like this thing. It was things that, like, I knew I was going to enjoy. But it's super thick. Like, this is like 700 to 800 pages. It's not, doesn't look quite as large because the pages are so, like, thin, but this is a different world. It's her first fully adult book, and it's set in an urban fantasy setting, which sometimes works for me and sometimes doesn't. So I was ridiculously nervous going into this book, but I wanted to give it a try because I thought for sure I was going to enjoy her writing. And I did. Like, I did not stop talking about this for months and months and months. Like, clearly I'm still obsessed with this book. Like, the fact that there's a second one coming out in like a couple of months, I am not okay. So this takes place in a city called Crescent City, and it's kind of a hodgepodge. You've got a bunch of different magical and mythical creatures. You've got all of these different houses, which are I can't remember exactly what each house stands for, but each house is like a collection of certain people. You have witches, and you've got fae, and you've got werewolves, and you've got like mer people, and you've got angels, and that's just vampires, I think, are also there. Like, that's just a sprinkle of just a few of the magical creatures that are in this world. And based on some stuff that happens at the beginning of this book, Bryce kind of gets suckered and like pulled into this mystery by the archangels. Archangels. However, archangels. She gets pulled in, and they're kind of like running the city a little bit. So she gets pulled into this mystery that surrounds some stuff that happened at the beginning of the book. And so it's her and this guy named Hunt. He is a fallen angel, so he's basically enslaved to these archangels, and it's the two of them that are just trying to like solve this mystery together. I loved this. I will link, if I haven't already, I'll link my vlog up above where I go into detail on all of my like in-depth thoughts as I'm reading it, but basically I had every single emotion across the board while reading this book. I fell head over heels in love with our main characters and our main couple, and I loved Bryce. I thought she was just a fascinating character to follow because she's got a whole lot of issues. There's a lot of trauma surrounding her as well because of a couple of things that happened at the beginning of this book, and she was just really fascinating to follow, and I loved it because you've got fantastic plot things that are going on. Like, you're sitting there and so much is happening plot-wise, yet you're still being shown this incredible new city, which is fascinating to read about, and then you're watching these two very broken people just kind of like learn how to work together, and then of course things blossom from that. So I adored this book. I mean, I could not stop talking about it. I'm sure many of you were so tired of hearing me talk about this. You probably still are tired of hearing me talk about this. But it was great. Oh my gosh, I can't. My favorite book of the year, without a doubt. But like I said, these two kind of go back and forth on being which one is my favorite because they're kind of tied for first. But yeah, I'm saying it's this one. In this moment as of recording, it's this one, and are we at all surprised? But that is all I have for you guys today. That is my list of my top 10 favorite books from 2021. Let me know down below if you have read any of the books that I mentioned in this video, or if you have a favorite book from 2021. I would love to know what some of your, favorite books that you read this year. Share the book love. But I do hope that you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe down below if you want to be part of this awesome growing family. I've also got all my social media down there, as well as other fun bookish links, so don't forget to check all of that out, and I will see you guys in my next video, which will be next year. Bye. Am I cheesy for saying that? Maybe. Am I gonna keep it in? Absolutely.